As the nation celebrates civil rights icon, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we are learning more about his connection to Connecticut.
We love to tell that story.
Back in 1947, King and other students from Morehouse College arrived in Connecticut. As a part of a tuition assistance program, they worked in the tobacco fields. King attended the First Church of Christ in Simsbury, and on one Sunday morning,
the choir director heard a beautiful baritone voice coming up from the floor of the church, and he said, "Who is that? Invite that person up here." And they said, "Oh no, that's just one of the tobacco workers," by which they meant that's a black man. That wouldn't be somebody we would normally invite up.
But for a predominantly white church in the era of Jim Crow, the choir director would make a move that stunned even King.
That choir director said, "I don't care about the color of his skin. As long as he can sing, invite him up." He wrote about his experience in Connecticut, in churches in Connecticut, in restaurants in Connecticut. He wrote about the difference that he experienced also on trains, that when he rode a train in Connecticut, it wasn't segregated.
And now, over 7 decades later, the House of Worship finds themselves on the front line of wanting to make a more intentional commitment to becoming an anti-racist church.
Nearly everyone is quick to say, "I'm not a racist," right? You know, meaning I don't use slurs and I believe everybody is equal and these kinds of things. But that's very different to just say that than to make a commitment to fight and challenge racism.
And so they started a program that does just that.
We have a team of people that went through a 6-month-long training with people from 8 other churches called a Racial Justice Activation Team. We have a number of programs that we offer our members. Also, we make a commitment in the greater Hartford community through a community organizing initiative in Hartford called the Greater Hartford Interfaith Action Alliance.
But the pastor isn't afraid to be honest about the church's history.
An early minister of this church was Simsbury's first slave owner. And we don't tell that story. Most people don't know it. But it's important to tell that story just as much as it is the MLK story. So we need to be accountable. Jesus regularly confronted, and I will say racism. It wasn't called that at the time, but every time you read a story in the Bible about Samaritans, you can use that as an example of a time that Jesus stood up and confronted people about minority people in his community.
And the ultimate goal is for people to comprehend.
The real work is in us, and better understanding the way we participate in systems that are racist and maybe are blind to them. Maybe the way the stories we tell and the narratives we tell are incomplete because they don't account for the racism that's implicit in them.
And although the church has changed and the pews have been spruced up, the same message that Dr. King carried with him over 70 years ago, as he said in the sanctuary, remains. And that is to love people, to not judge them by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. And that real change doesn't start externally, but begins within each of us. Reporting here in Simsbury, Michael Fuller, NBC Connecticut News.